Hey guys, it's Come4MC here again. Welcome to our next installment of our LBP2-Torials. Today we are going to again be talking about Sackbots, these stupid little guys. Today we're going to be taking our first step towards making more intelligent Sackbots. So I'm going to show you guys how to act out some complex scenes that are a little more in-depth than just recording things, and we're going to talk about how you can change behaviors and things on the fly. So if I open up the basic Sackbot behavior chip, you'll notice that it has right up top the animation style. It defaults to robot. You can change the expression type of your Sackbot, and behavior, this is the thing we're going to be spending most of our time with today, and it's default to idle, so he'll just sit there. We're going to be working primarily with the act behavior, so I'm going to change it over to act. Now a little side note about act, you can't change your expression type, so you would act that part out on your own. If I change my animation style to one of the custom characters, say Avalon, and you don't act anything out, Sackbot actually remains completely still. So some of you were wondering how I did that in my wizard level to make statues. I just set their animation style to Avalon, set up acting, and didn't record anything. And that makes them stand perfectly still. Okay? Well, I'm going to show you just real quick what it looks like when you record your behavior. If I select record, you'll get a 3-second countdown, and then you'll get a red circle in the corner of your screen, and that means you're acting. And you can act out whatever. You could do facial expressions, and then you just hit circle, and it'll automatically rewind, and the animation is set up for you. Okay? So if I unpause, he'll act out exactly what I did, including facial animations. I didn't do anything here, but you could. And then he'll return to where he started and act over again because I have it set to loop absolute. That means it'll loop the recording, and it'll do it absolutely, so it'll always start in the same place. If I change it to loop relative, when the animation is done, it'll just start over again wherever he is. So because in my animation or my recording, I acted out a scene where I ended further right than where I started, this Sackbot, because it's set to loop relative, will slowly work his way to the right. That may or may not be desirable, but that's what will happen. And then play once should be obvious as to what happens. It'll play once, and then he'll just go to idle mode and sit there. Okay? So you would generally only use that if you have like a move or something that you would want him to act out. Okay, well, if I wanted to change Sackbot behaviors on the fly, I can just copy that chip. I'm going to set this one to loop absolute again. And so now, if I record a new animation, such as just jumping in place, now I can switch between my two animations using a selector. A selector is very handy for this because you want to turn one thing on while you turn another thing off. So I'll just use a 2-port selector. I'll take the first input and wire it to the default state, second input and wire it to my new recording. So now what's going to happen if I set these both to loop absolute? He'll act out whatever state is he'll act out whatever act or recording is currently active. If I change my selector state, he'll switch, and he'll just start acting out that second animation, that second recording state. So I could change these on the fly, and he'll change his behavior. Okay, so this is all fine and well. A lot of you probably knew this already. We can do some other interesting things if we use modifiers to our Sackbot. So I have set up off to the side here is another Sackbot with some custom abilities. Okay, so I just have a Sackbot right now, and the only thing I've put on is a controlinator. And if I expand this out, I'll just get rid of this. I don't need this anymore. I've got 2 custom animation chips here that I've just borrowed from my wizard level. It's up to you to make these, but I have one here for a roll. I just use a couple of movers to rotate and move my Sackbot, and it creates this nice roll animation. And I've got a complicated jump animation as well, which has my super jump. If you played my wizard level, when you roll and jump, you jump even higher. Okay, so it's just got these 2 things in here, which would normally I would put those on a Sackbot that I'm controlling, and it would allow me to do these super moves or super animations or whatever. And then I just make sure my controlinator is set to remote control no. It's just set to the default animation or default thing. So now if I go and record a new animation with this Sackbot, he is capable of doing those special animations, those special moves. So here I'm able to roll a few times, and jumping works like normal, and if I roll and jump, he does the super jump. Okay, so I've set these up ahead of time. I won't go through how to make them because they're a little complicated. But if I just let the recording run here, you'll see that he's able to do these special moves. So you could make a Sackbot that shoots things. You could make a Sackbot that has a double jump. You could do any sorts of things, and you can control them all with the Sackbot recording. All you have to do is put that controlinator right on the chip. Okay, so I'm just going to set the default animation, default behavior to just follow. And then I'll show you real quick what it looks like, or how this works with how you interpret what the Sackbot presses to be able to use that to say fire an emitter or whatever. Here I'm just going to use it to turn on a light. So I'm going to say when I hit the X button, it's going to turn on that light. So that's as simple as what that's all I have to do. That's as simple as what it is. I put that on there, or excuse me, I put the controlinator on there, and then I wire from the X button to a light. And now when I record something and I hit the X button, it's going to turn that light on. You can see that happening right here. So really, really basic. So now if I end this animation and then I let it play out, it would hit that light exactly as I had done. Okay. Well, I'm not going to do something stupid like turn on a light. I'm going to set up something that could actually be useful in a level, such as a Sackbot jumping and doing something fancy other than just following the player. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the default behavior to be just follow the player, but I'm going to allow this to switch to a custom Sackbot animation. So I'm going to act something out, and I'm going to use my special wizard Sackbot here, so that when I act this out I can roll and do a big jump, shimmy across this little gap here, and then drop down and end the animation. So now all I need to do in order for the Sackbot to do that is to just switch from the follow behavior to that recorded act behavior. And again, I just use this selector for that. So I place the selector down, wire the default state to Sackbot input, or to the just follow behavior, and then I'll make the second one the act behavior, where he jumped across that gap and shimmied across and whatever. So to activate this, it's as simple as just changing that selector state. So I'll use a button for that, and I just wire to that second selector override. So now when I jump on the button, it's going to change the Sackbot behavior. He'll jump and do exactly as I did with the recording. He'll drop down, and then he'll just default to idle once that animation is over, because I set it to play just once. Obviously we don't want it to play over and over again. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, now I would like, for once the animation is done, for it to default back to the follow behavior. Okay, so one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my left click button, since it's generally not used. I'm going to take my left click from my controlinator and wire it back to the override that will reset the selector back to the follow behavior. I hope that's making sense. So now if I record a new animation, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to roll, jump, shimmy across, and then drop down. But before I hit circle, I'm going to click L3 in. I'm going to click L3 and then hit circle. So what that's going to do is it's actually inside the act behavior. It's going to use the controlinator to reset it back to the follow behavior. So you'll notice that wire lit up when I clicked L3, and the behavior has been reset back to follow. There are other methods to doing this, but I find this to be really handy. You can just click the stick at the end and you don't have to time anything out. It's just when the animation is done, it'll reset. Okay, so I'm going to set up just a little simple scene that uses exactly this. So I'm going to wire up a button to this selector. So now imagine that you're playing over here on this side of this gap, and you have a Sackbot buddy that's on the other side of the gap, and you want to when you hit this button, have that Sackbot cross the gap and come over and then start following you. We can definitely do that. So there you can see the wire moving up above. He had jumped, he's shimmying across, and then when he drops down, his animation ends, and he switches over to the follow behavior. So it's really simple. Now there are a couple of little things that we would want to add in to make this a more robust system. We only want him to do that animation once, and right now it'll do it each time I press that button. So I'm just going to put a counter, a 1 count counter on here. That's going to be a permanent switch. So that means it's going to do it once and then stop. And then I'll use a pulse generator. So I have a counter, that's a permanent switch, wired into another counter. But this counter resets itself, so that's what's called a pulse. And then it'll wire up into that second selector port. If you're not sure about how that pulse works, check out my menu screen tutorial. It goes over that a little more in depth. Okay, so I jump. He is coming over. He's coming across the gap. He drops down, and even though I'm still on the button, his animation is done, and he's following me. And if I jump on the button more, he doesn't do it again. So it's just a one-time thing. Okay, so that works really well. In order to make the scene a little more complete, I'd probably put a movie camera on it, so I'll do just that. I'll just pull out a movie camera, set that up on the Sackbot, because that's the easiest way to do it, is to just make it follow the thing that it's focusing on. And then I'll set to just look at him and follow. I'll make sure that the player's controls are disabled there so they can't move around and screw anything up. I don't think they could in this case, but I'll just leave it like that. I'll set the hold time on this to be 10 seconds. It's longer than we need, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable it early. And then we'll set the hard pan transition type. It's mostly default. This will work just fine. And then I'm going to make a copy of the camera. And I'm going to set this type to cut. So it's the exact same camera scene. Hold time I'm going to set to 0. So what this is going to do is going to cancel the active movie camera once it resets back to the default Sackbot behavior. Okay, so now if I unpause this and I jump on the button, it's going to cut to that Sackbot. It's going to show him jumping across the gap, shimmying, shimmying, shimmying. And then once his behavior is done, the animation is done, the camera's going to turn off and he's going to go to follow me. So that there is a really nice system. So you could set up a bunch of these different animations for different things that a Sackbot playable character could do. You do have to be a little careful with these pre-recorded Sackbot animations, because I'm going to show you right here. I'm just going to use this key as a way to, or this tag as a way to see where I started him at. If I move the Sackbot over and then try to do the same thing, look what happens. Because he didn't start in the same place, his recording is all screwed up because he's not smart enough to observe the change in his behavior. So all he does is just act out the exact button presses that I did. Okay, so you do have to be a little careful about how you're going to set this up. You want to make sure that if you have a touchy animation, that he always starts in the same place. Otherwise, it's going to be screwed up if there's slight changes in the environment. Okay, so here, this one is kind of a touchy thing. It's got grab and shimmy and a gap that he's got to traverse. So you'd probably want to make sure that he's starting in exactly the same spot each time if you're going to use this method. I actually did use this method in the second part of my wizard level. It was a right pain. Oh, it drove me absolutely nuts. I actually had to do the animation, and then if I wanted to tweak the surroundings, I had to re-record everything. And so it's really complicated, or it's really touchy. I guess it's not that complicated. It's pretty simple. But next time we're going to go over something that's a little more malleable, a little more robust, so that the Sackbot is aware of his surroundings. And yeah, so that's where we'll go next time. Take care. See you guys.
The tutorials will unleash not only exciting tools and objects, but knowledge and the deepest secrets of the cosmos.